Hello everyone, thank you for joining me. I am Toby from Toby Urban Sketch. Today we are looking at 5 stages to every sketch. Um, Basically these are the rules that I loosely follow to build up all my sketches, and whatever style, however loose I'm going, I tend to follow these steps, and it just gives me a nice framework to work from. Now if you're enjoying my videos, please do like and subscribe. It helps me bring more content and more things which hopefully you're enjoying. Um, and if you have any suggestions, whatever, just leave me a comment. Anyway, as you can see, I am sort of speed sketching in the background of this one. And I want to talk you through the process that I'm going through. So the first step to any sketch for me is a loose line drawing. So really wibbly wobbly, using a fine pen, in this case a 0.2mm pen, and just building up details. So you can see I started here with the focal points. I've got this fan, and then there's a chap sitting in I'm going to call it a box, a crow's nest type thing, and he's fixing a lamppost. And these are all quite challenging things to draw, so it's important that we're sort of forgiving on ourselves and just start with these really loose lines and gradually build things up, rather than thinking that, every line we draw has to be perfect first time. You'll notice I've drawn a random squiggle on the right hand side of the image, and the reason for that is just to prove the point that these random squiggles, they'll disappear. If I've got things wrong, they'll disappear. You might have noticed as I was drawing the van, I went over the lines a couple of times, and each time the line moved a little bit, and that's just I'm working out where things are going. Now I'm moving on. I've sort of done the focal point, right? So still on stage 1, drawing this loose drawing. I've done the focal point, which is the van and the chap, and now I'm just setting the background. And a really key part of this is you'll notice that the exact lining up of the windows doesn't fit the reference. It's pretty much there, but it's not exactly right. And things don't have to be exactly the same as a photo reference or as what's in front of you. No one's ever going to see, apart from you guys watching this, no one's ever going to see my sketch next to a photo. So it's okay to move things to make it fit your agenda. That said, it's good to also use cues from the photo to keep things approximately in line. So, for example, when I drew there's a garage just behind the van in, I kept the edges of the garage lined up with the same place in the van. And then I used the top of the garage to set the bottom of the window, and I lined up all the windows, just working through simple processes like this. Now you'll notice on the right, we're now drawing another house, and I'm going to pretend, not very well, that I drew that first roof line in on purpose, again to make the point. But actually what I did is I made quite a big mistake in my perspective. I put the roof level with the bottom of the window on the left. So you can see I've got this sort of triangle bisecting this house on the right. That doesn't matter. Again, a bit silly. I noticed it and then moved the roof up. But it really doesn't matter that there's these funny lines in there. Everything's going to get lost. So in this first stage of your sketching, all you're trying to do is set the basic idea of what's going on with some loose lines. If you make mistakes, if you can work with pencil, so if you make mistakes you can rub them out, but like this you can work with pen and it's fine. Mistakes will happen, and you've got loosely and with little like spidery lines or gentle lines, you can just move the line and it just won't show up. Already having sort of sketched in those tree-like shapes in the gap between the houses, you're losing some of that obvious sort of random triangle in the house. So already things are disappearing. And just also I've moved on a bit and I've started adding bits of texture in places. I'm adding the curb here, giving it a 3D shape, just making the curb more than one line. And I've added some initial shading and hatching just to start giving that loose sketch a tiny bit of shape. So that there is the end of the first stage. Really loose lines, don't be afraid to move them, and don't worry if you make mistakes. It's all about just building up a picture. And what is step 2? Of course, it is a lovely loose wash, a sort of loose underpainting of all those bright colours. I like starting with the sky, and if you look at any of my other videos, you'll see I use a very similar process every time, and it is a big wash of water, and then we start dropping pigment in on that water. You can use a tissue like I am there to either pull out shapes and textures in the sky, or to remove excess water. You can also move the paper around. So initially when I was doing this, I was holding the paper about 10 to 20 degrees angle, just to let that water and pigment all run down and naturally pool. And now I've popped it down flat because I want to pull out a few more textures. And I'm just working around with doing some splashes and some water splashes, and then dropping pigment and then moving just gently while this is nice and wet, moving around. One of the key things I'm trying to achieve as well is I want this chap, our sort of the very centre of our focal point is probably this chap in the crow's nest, and I want to keep him clean because I want him to really stand out at the end, and that'll be in one of the later stages, of course. Now, because things are still wet, and because we're doing this really lovely loose painting, we can add in extra pigment. So here I'm just adding, it was a cobalt blue sky, I'm adding some quinacridone gold just at the bottom to give that lovely glow and to separate the houses from the sky. But, and you know, it gives them a bit of space, but it also gives that lovely glow. It's quite a warm, sunny day. And I just washed those colours down and joined them up to the tree. So that's another really key point about this loose wash. It's not just there to provide underpainting and light. It also joins everything up. So the sky is now joined to this glow, which is washed down and joined to this tree. And then I'm going to move around, adding in some sort of warm brick colour. So this is a mix of Scarlet Lake and cobalt blue, which gives us a dull purple. And I'm just using the same colour in slightly different variations on all the bricks, and I'm making sure they join up. So you'll see the garage is joined to that wall at the front, which is joined to the house, which is joined to the back house. Another step is keeping things simple, but also highlighting important features like windows. The really simple way of doing windows is to use the same colour as the sky. Or the other way of doing it, really simply, is to make it a dull colour, like a Payne's grey or a shadow colour, and then unifying that. So even in the van, I'm just popping in some colour now. It's the same colour as the windows, and that means every window has a similar idea, and our eye instantly looks across this image and goes, windows. We don't have to explain any more than that. The van is white, and I'm just setting some initial details here. So we'll do a lot more of these kind of details later in the image. Sort of doing shadows and things comes in a later stage of my normal sketching process. But this is kind of just applying a little bit of that loose texture and wash to the very foreground before we move on. And now we move on. So what is the next step? It is I'm going to call it bringing things forward with the pen and just pulling out details, but it's the pen work number 2. And what I was showing you briefly, I don't know if you caught it, that this is a bigger pen. So I was using a 0.2 pen for the first sketch. Now this is a 0.4. And I often use 0.4, 0.5, sometimes on a big thing, a 0.8 even. And you'll notice as things are outlined with this bolder pen, they suddenly come forward. They jump out the page. And I just start at the back and work forward this time. Because that means if you start gently at the back, important details in the back, like the roof, the windows, will come forward, and then you'll gradually be able to see how much more forward you need to bring other things like the focal point. And now I'm getting there, now to the focal point, to the van, and I'm highlighting these key details. I always love, for example, bringing out lights and number plates in vehicles, because I really think that they're a key part of our understanding of what that is. And you'll see in that sort of shadowy interior of the van, rather than focus on what's in the reference image, I've just used the pen to outline the shapes which I've created with sort of fairly random shadows inside. And it just makes sense when you do that. It sort of instantly we have made sense of fairly random processes by just using the pen to outline shapes which that randomness has produced. And just continuing around now and making sure that these lines on our man, on our van, on the sort of arm holding the crow's nest up, that they are the boldest thing, because these are both the most important part of our image in terms of being the focal point, and two, they're the furthest forward. So we want them to be brought the furthest forward. Then sort of just looking around the image and seeing what else can I add, like finding little details and adding shape in by getting a bit of dark black under the crow's nest, before moving, of course, to what is now stage 4. And stage 4 is shadows. And shadows are really key. There's loads of lovely colours you can use for shadows. Here I'm using Indanthrone blue and a Van Dyke brown. Classically, people will use ultramarine and burnt sienna or burnt umber or Payne's grey or neutral tint. There's loads of options. Moonglow's a favourite. And I'm just going under, under everywhere there might be shadow. So under the eaves of the houses, under the roof, under all the windows, at the top of the windows, under the lines in that van, at the top of walls, just producing these effects essentially. And then after we've done our shadows, we move on to the next stage. And the next stage is those final bright and interesting colour touches. And you'll see I've been sort of splashing around, and splashes are wonderful for that. And then I'm also adding in these bright colours. So here there's some yellow. Again, like I'd say I love road markings, and you can see I've popped in some road markings. And then using the same yellow for the light at the front and the same yellow for the arm and for the man, and just making these colours the most intense, the brightest colours. They're all in our focal point, and so everything there will just be easy to see, easy to visualise. And that's that done. So obviously, I suppose stage 6, pop a signature on it and feel proud. Doesn't matter how it went, you probably, from everything, learned something. One thing I should have done in a slightly earlier stage was actually add in these telephone wires, which I think are something which make a painting really interesting, having these shapes just flowing across the page. So this is me talking too much and forgetting in stage 3 to just finish off those bits of pen work. But never too late. You can always go back, and that just goes to show essentially that even if you don't do things in exactly the right order, it doesn't matter. You can go back, you can change things. You don't have to stick rigidly to rules. Rules are nice if they help you guide your process, but not if they hinder you. And that's the painting complete. So if you've enjoyed this, please do leave a comment, like, subscribe. I'd love to bring you more content like this if it's useful. So this painting probably took me 45 minutes, 50 minutes. And then turning it to speed drawing so I can talk about principles. Is that useful? If it is, just let me know. Anyway, thank you for watching. Have a great day. Hope you get to do something creative today as well.